Williams and Bill Cox. The director's chair. Focus on film, projects and people.
Hi everyone, my name is Bill Cox and this is the Director's Chair, where we focus on films, projects, and people. Tonight's going to be a very special episode of the Director's Chair because we're going to focus a little bit more on people. Now more than ever, if you want to get anywhere in life, I fully recommend that you find a mentor. You look at occupations and employers, they don't have the overhead or the time or the resources and haven't made the commitment for employee development the way they have in the past. We recognize that here at the Director's Chair, and we want to encourage each and every one of you to go out and develop your own talent. But we don't want you to do that haphazardly. We want to make sure that you have the opportunity to see someone who has developed that relationship themselves. And I have. With us tonight is Dave Davis. They call him the Cat Mentor. He's a coach, advisor, and trainer. And I met Dave many years ago. And if the quality of the mentoring is determined by how long the advices last, Dave Davis' advice has lasted till this very day and beyond. I still use the lessons that Dave Davis has taught me. And now it's with my pleasure to introduce him to you, our audience, to help you find a mentor. I want to introduce to you Mr. Dave Davis, the Cat Mentor.
Thank you, Bill. Appreciate being invited and appreciate the concepts that you have said that you've learned. I think one of the most important things that any coach or mentor can do is to reflect on somebody like yourself who has learned these things, because you can try to teach somebody something, but whether they accept it or not is another story. In your case, you've accepted it, taken it in, and made it a part of what you do. So I congratulate you for that.
And one thing about you in particular, but in general, mentors out there, you have the ability to tailor the advice to not only the person or the industry. And I think that's what helps make your service that much better for the individual.
Well, there are probably 400 to 500 sessions that I do, and the topics vary, and you're familiar with them. I mean, as a matter of fact, there's one right here that we'll probably talk about today. But every time I do a session, you have to appeal to a couple of different aspects of the human nature. We all see, we all hear, and we all feel. But each one of us has a predilection for one of those. For example, I'm a very visual person. And in some cases, they say that almost 50% of the population out there is visual, so they need to see things. That doesn't mean they don't touch or feel or listen, but their primary is visual. But if you're not visual, and I try to communicate with you in a visual method, and you are the other type,
right,
we're not quite connecting as well as we should. So that's one of the important concepts I think, for everybody to learn. Figure out, how does the other person take in the world? Are they primarily a visual or an auditory or a kinesthetic? They like to see and feel and touch things.
You've been mentoring for roughly how many years, Dave?
Oh, geez, probably 45 years.
45 years. And I want the audience to have the opportunity to experience one of Dave's lessons. So if you would, in just a few minutes, I'd like to turn the floor over to you and let you go through one of your lessons.
I'd be more than happy to do that.
But before I let you go into that, could you explain to the audience the difference that you've seen in the students over the years as far as they're yearning to learn, how malleable they are, or what, or just any thoughts, the continuing education crowd that you deal with?
Well, what's very interesting is that the groups that I work with, there's primarily two types of groups. One, I'll work with a company who puts their employees into the program. And then I'll work with individuals who come and attend my sessions. And many times they're combined. Sometimes a company will allow outsiders to come in and sit through some of the workshops that we do. But what I've noticed is the younger people, at least in the groups that I've found, are kind of begging for the kind of information that connects them with the world. And whether they're in sales or some other kind of a job, they're beginning to see how important it is to understand how to communicate. And that unless you're in a cave somewhere, our job is to communicate with other people, our friends, our family, our associates, our businesses.
Now that's why I felt it was perfect. You were a perfect match for our audience here. The people that watch this show are independent filmmakers, producers, people that are working hard on their own. They need these tricks of the trade. They need more time. They need to be able to maximize their effort because they're out there on a shoestring budget. They are it. But like you said, it's fertile ground if you have a motivated person, and that's the type of audience that we have here. And when we're going to come back, Dave Davis is going to give you more time in your day.
Chair. Focus on film, projects and people with Bob Williams and Bill Cox.
And welcome back, everyone. This is the Director's Chair, and my name is Bill Cox. Bob Williams is not here, but you don't have to worry. We have Dave Davis here. Dave Davis is a coach, advisor, trainer extraordinaire. And what he has explained to us previously in this previous segment, he was talking about training and how it's evolved over the years and how the groups that he works with are fertile ground because they're motivated people. And so what he's been wonderful in the fact that he wants to go ahead and give us a lesson. And he's going to give us more time in our day. So I'm going to turn it over to coach, advisor, trainer extraordinaire, Mr. Dave Davis.
Well, thanks, Bill. I think one of the ways that we talked in the previous session about the concept of connecting with people, sometimes visually, sometimes auditory, and then sometimes kinesthetically, put their hands on things. So every session that I do involves some type of a handout that they can look at. Now, some people don't, they'd just rather hear me talk. Most people would rather hear me talk, but also see and have something. Now they can take notes on this, and they can take it home with them and refer to it later. Let's talk today about a concept called about how to cut your to-do list. I mean, you have a to-do list, Bill?
Doesn't everybody that's productive?
Yes.
I mean, that's the first thing to becoming productive, is to have a to-do list. And if you don't have anything on your to-do list, you think you're worthless. So you get in the habit of making them long, and then soon they just become overwhelming. You're right.
Well, you're making a good point, because sometimes we do have the tendency to make them too long,
Right.
and then we try to do them all, and
Right.
that doesn't work. So, there's nothing wrong with having a long to-do list, but you need to cut it someplace so that what's left fits in the block of time that you have, whether it's an hour or a day or a week, and leave the other things down below the cut line. But then when you cross something off up here, you can bring the next thing up. So that's a way to manage a to-do list that's a little more effective. There's another great colleague of mine, his name is David Allen, and he's written a number of great books, which I highly recommend. And he has something called the 2-minute rule, which is what I'm going to talk about next. And the concept of the 2-minute rule is basically take immediate action on anything that you can get done in 2 minutes or less. Don't put it off. Something comes to your mind and it's only going to take 2 minutes or even less, do it. And the rationale behind that is if you don't do it now, the time that it takes to write that down or to put it in your to-do list or to put it on your calendar in some way probably takes more time than it's worth. Just do it. Do it now. Now that's the 2-minute rule. If it takes longer than 2 minutes, you're probably going to want to put it on your schedule in some way. Alan's got a great book that also includes this piece of information about the 2-minute rule. Next, let's talk about 4 things that we can use, strategies I'll call them, to kind of cut your to-do list down to size so that it's manageable. So number 1 on the list here says, understand the 5 basic decisions that you can make about anything that's on your to-do list. Let's talk about each one of them. The first one is the obvious one. I mean, if it's on your to-do list, you can get it off your to-do list by taking action on it now.
Right, that's the 2-minute ones.
Yes, and that's probably what we should do most of the time.
Right.
But you can delegate it. That's the second item. So some of us maybe not have the right to delegate, but we have managers and we have people that support us. Think about delegating it. You can have a great to-do list, but don't think you have to do everything on that to-do list.
Right.
The third item is defer it. Now that's third because it's not quite the most productive thing to do. But sometimes you have something to do and there are other things above it, so you need to defer this one. That doesn't mean you're not going to do it. It just means you're putting it off.
Those typically, for me, are the ones that can become infected.
They're killers.
Those are the things that you don't want. There's a reason why you defer it. You probably deferred it from the last list.
Yeah, I don't want to do it.
I don't. That's exactly it. You know, if you see it repeatedly, if you see it on repeated lists, pretty good chance there's come a time, a day of reckoning for that thing.
Well, Bill, we all have the human characteristic of wanting to do things that we like to do, which then leads to what you were saying, and that is putting off the things that we should do, but that we don't like to do. Well, every to-do list is going to have a combination of those things. Some that we like to do, and we're going to go ahead and do them. Some that we don't like to do, but they're on the to-do list for a reason. We probably ought to book it and do it.
Right.
Okay, so the fourth item is you can file an item for later reference. And the fifth is, and we probably ought to do more of this, you can delete it and forget about it. Now think about this. Look at your to-do list and say to yourself, are there things on there that I really shouldn't do? Maybe they're things I like to do, but they are not productive in the scheme of things for my life, both my personal and my professional life. Sometimes we put things on the to-do list because we like them, but they don't contribute anything. And that's why this item is sometimes we need to delete it and forget about it. Tough decision sometimes, but it's a wise one every once in a while.
Yeah, you know, that is, the delete is right after you deferred it.
Yes.
If you've deferred it for as long as you can.
Maybe you should delete it.
That's right, and not do it.
All right, let's go to the other side of the page. And the second item is, on your to-do list, whatever it is, make a decision and then act on it. This is probably one of the most important things that you can do with your to-do list, particularly if it's something that you've been putting off. But decide to do it. Now, there's lots of different ways to do that. Some people just make a to-do list and carry it with them on a daily basis. Some take it on their smartphones and have a to-do list there. It doesn't matter what you do, but what does matter is you book something that must be done and then you do it.
Do it.
Now, how do you know if you've done it, Bill?
there's a sense of relief
Oh, yes.
that it's done. And when there comes a point in time that you can't defer it any longer, it needs to be done. For me, and I don't know about the rest of the folks out there, things that are enjoyable get done typically pretty quickly. They don't necessarily make it to my to-do list because I'm looking forward to doing them. The things that do make my to-do list, I'll admit that I put them in ascending order of what is from least distasteful to most distasteful. So,
Well, you also mentioned, and I think this is important, even if you do something from your to-do list that isn't your favorite thing to do, once you've done it, and there's a sense of accomplishment, there's a sense of reward that you give yourself, and we need those strokes just to make our lives more pleasant. So
Also
sometimes
gives
we
you
need to
momentum.
bite the bullet, so to speak.
and it gives you momentum.
Oh yes.
You know, you accomplish something that has been an obstacle, you know, that builds you up. Yeah, I can take on the next one.
Bingo.
You know, absolutely.
All right. Number 3, don't second guess yourself on your to-do list. It's really unproductive to do that. Let me put something in here.
Let me explain that. Don't second guess yourself on what you put on it, or
Well, you don't want to spend too much time second guessing why you even have this on your list. Now, you don't want to put anything on the list that's not important, but every once in a while you look at it and you say, well, I really need to do this. We could go back to what we talked about earlier. Maybe you do need to delete it, but on the other side of the coin, maybe you do need to do it and quit second guessing yourself. There's a thing called paralysis by analysis. And sometimes we put off things on our to-do list by saying, okay, well, I need to analyze this a little more. I need to spend a little more time trying to figure this out. And sometimes that's true, but more often than not, it's simply an excuse not to do it.
when you come to a fork in the road, take it.
That's a good one, Bill. I appreciate that.
Right.
All right, let's talk about number 4, the last of the 4 items on our discussion today. And the 4th item is set a time limit on any to-do. Now, how do you do that? Well, one of the most important things you can do on a to-do is to put it on your calendar. I mean, you might have a list, but if you haven't put it on your to-do on your calendar for the day, to do it at 9:30 or do it at 4 or do it at noon, the chances of it getting done are much less. So to paraphrase Hawaii Five-0, book 'em, Dano.
Book 'em, Dano.
Put it on the calendar. Make sure that you've scheduled time to do it. Because if you don't, lots of things on the to-do list, and we talked about this moments earlier, have a tendency to slide down, and they stay there, but they keep bugging you.
That's also that accountability thing
It is accountability.
as well. When you set yourself up for a certain time to have something completed, then you're making a commitment that you're going to get that accomplished.
Yes. And that's an important word, the word commitment, particularly if you write it in your calendar or on however you're managing your day. And some people don't manage their day very well because they don't have a calendar, but you should probably book times all day long. You have appointments with other people, that definitely goes on your calendar. I have a favorite called AWY, appointments with yourself. Book a block of time, you need to get something done, and make an appointment with yourself to do something from your to-do list. Now, the value of an appointment is simply this. If you have an appointment with a client or with somebody important, are you going to keep that appointment?
No, Yeah,
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely.
So the same thing holds true when you have an appointment with yourself to get something done. Now, we go back to the 2-minute rule. If it's something simple and you can do it quickly, you don't want to put it on your calendar. But if it's something that's going to take 15 minutes, a half hour, even an hour, part of a project, make an AWY, an appointment with yourself, right on your calendar.
I find that more and more employee and personal development is up to the individual. A couple of reasons. Because companies aren't spending money and don't have the budgets to develop people, you come in and you perform and you can stay, and if you perform really well, you move up in theory. And whereas now, small business, particularly in the people in our audience, 1 and 2, and it's more teamwork, so they have to be conscious of their own development, and they have to be self-motivated, and they have to make those commitments.
True.
Once you develop those habits, though, it will make the journey easier, and you'll go farther when you develop those disciplined habits.
That's so wise. One of the concepts, you explained it earlier, I am the cat mentor. And, obviously it doesn't have anything to do with lions or tigers or pussycats. It's coach, advisor, trainer.
But you're a lion, though.
Yeah, but the last word is a mentor.
Right.
And literally all of my clients spend time with me over a period of years. Now, that's not because they don't learn well.
Right.
It's simply because many of the things in life is very complex. Many of the things need to be re-emphasized. It's kind of like a juggling game. We're juggling lots of things all the time. And sometimes we spend time over here on these items and this falls off. Well, my job relative to training people to manage their lives and manage their careers is to pick these things up and put them back in the mix. And so that's why most of my clients, we meet at least once a week. And I'm re-emphasizing some of the things that we talk about today, along with many others.
Well, one thing about your program that I feel is different from other people's, and you can look at it right in the title: coach, advisor, trainer. Now, at times, I need a coach.
Yes.
Because as you're going through life, changing jobs, it's harder for a person to judge themselves when they're looking out of their eyeballs as opposed to have an informed person looking at them.
True.
Then you come to the advisor part. There's times when you just need a little wise business advice. But then you might be into something that you didn't totally prepare for, and you do need a trainer.
Well, you picked up very well on the concept of being a cat mentor and the needs that various individuals have. Here's an interesting concept that I've found to be very true over the years in my efforts in my career. Many times when I'm working with someone and they have an issue, I may not have a solution for them. However, sometimes just by talking it out and allowing me to ask them questions, a very high % of the time, they have a light bulb moment when they say, oh gosh, now here's what I think I could do. And so it enables them to come up with a solution on their own. Now, that's not to say, Bill, that I don't have some solutions every once in a while.
Right.
But sometimes the mentoring piece of that and the coaching piece of that involves getting them to think through something and come up to their own conclusion, but enabling that.
And I think there's wise counsel helps the younger people. Younger people are driven, whereas an older sage can see the ebbs and flows. as opposed with the younger people are focused on their goal, or younger in their career or younger in their enthusiasm or whatever, as opposed with a sage that can look at the landscape and give them some wise training and wise guidance.
Yes.
And I don't think that, in particular, corporations are spending the money to do it, and it's because it's not necessarily in their best interest. They're looking at profits and deals and that kind of thing. And the person needs to be worried about that.
Yeah, and I find it interesting because most of my clients realize that they need to have coaching. They need to have mentoring. It's not something that makes them weak in any way. It's just something that adds to their life. And by the way, that applies whether it's a personal situation or whether it's a professional situation. And when I do coaching clinics where I sit down and speak with my clients about issues that they have, half of the time they're personal issues that they're focusing on. But it's a matter of taking control of their life and managing it as opposed to letting the rest of the world pull your strings. I have a favorite saying. It's called BIC, B-I-C, be in charge. And I always want to be, and I want my clients to always be in charge of the way they think, the way they feel, and the way they react. I don't want them to say, "Oh, you made me feel bad." No, I'm in charge of the way I feel. You might say something I don't like or I don't agree with, but I'm not going to let that bring me down. I want to be in charge of the way I think, the way I feel, and the way I react to things. And that's hard to do sometimes.
Oh, absolutely, because we have the two masks.
Two?
Well, minimum of two. There's the outward mask of how things are going. Oh, it's fine. And then there's the inward, the real mask.
Yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's been great. Dave, it's always great having you here.
It's a pleasure.
And you have a website?
No, I don't. Why? I should have one, shouldn't I?
You should. But Dave is always available at what? catmentor.com?
Yes.
or your email address is?
It's catmentor@yahoo.com.
Catmentor with a K.
No, with a C.
Oh, it's with a C. Catmentor with a C at yahoo.com if you want to get a hold of him. Thanks so much, Dave, for being here, and thank you, folks, for being here. This has been the Director's Chair. My name is Bill Cox. Thank you so much. Good night, everybody.